Hello YouTube, NantenJex here, and I just wanted to throw together this little off-the-cuff video without any script or anything like that, because I wanted to give my thoughts on the AlphaDream bankruptcy that was just announced, which came as a massive surprise. Usually Japanese gaming companies get bought out or saved. They don't tend to file for bankruptcy like this. Like good example being HAL Laboratories that would have gone bankrupt back in the 90s, but Nintendo saved them completely. Now it's not 100% never happened before. Obviously, a good example is Sing, a DS company. DS, not exclusively DS, but a lot of their well-known games were on DS. They made for Nintendo Another Code, Hotel Dusk, and they also made a game with Grasshopper that's completely skipping my mind. But they made detective games. And they went under as well back about 10 years ago, maybe? The last game I remember them releasing was on the Wii. Anyway, they're not the focus of today. The focus of today is AlphaDream, who are most well known for making the Mario and Luigi series. And I think that's what makes it a bigger surprise, because this is a Mario series. They tend to hit the millions, and most of the Mario Luigi games did pass the million marker. So how did this happen, right? Before I get into my overall thoughts on it, I did want to go over the history of AlphaDream because it might give us a bit more context for why this could have happened, and just to let people know who weren't familiar with their past works, because they did exist before Mario and Luigi. In fact, they were started in the year 2000 by X Square developers, people who had worked on Mario RPG, Final Fantasy III. I think some of them worked on Chrono Trigger. I know they had a shared development with that and Mario RPG, like the similar teams. Anyway, so it was actually, I think, the ex-president of Square who left and formed a smaller company called AlphaStar, which would later go on to become AlphaDream, and they made games like the early Hamtaro games on the Game Boy. They made a few original IPs, one of them being Tomato Adventure, which was published by Nintendo, and that was the game that was just before Mario and Luigi, the first one that came out in 2003, and after that was such a big success, they basically just focused on that series for the next 16 years, doing a couple of non-Mario and Luigi games in Japan only, one for DS, one for mobile phones, but neither of them were published by Nintendo. And Mario and Luigi has been their most successful series. It started off really well. The first one did very well. The second one did not as good, but still pretty great. And then the third one, Bowser's Inside Story, it's considered the best one and sold the best. It was really successful for the company. Following this, they went on to Mario and Luigi Dream Team, which didn't do as good as that, but did better than the first two Mario and Luigi games. And so things were looking up. But then Paper Jam came out, and Paper Jam did break 1 million, but only just broke 1 million. Following from that, there was the remake of the first Mario and Luigi game, which came out right before the Switch was about to come out, and didn't do very well. And then earlier this year they released Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story plus Bowser Jr.'s Story, I think it's called, a remake of the best selling game in the series, and that bombed. It's now the best selling game in the Mario and Luigi series. It's the worst selling Mario game ever made. That's how badly it did, which is a shame. And there are a few we can sort of track why did Paper Jam do so bad and what followed on afterwards. Why were they so failing so much? Because people clearly, even after 4 games, people were still enjoying it and it's still selling. But I think a problem with Paper Jam came with the perception of the Mario series at that time. New Super Mario Bros. Had basically been such a success for Nintendo, it actually caused the series to stagnate as they solely focused on just the core Mario cast and creatures and stuff like that, and most of the hardcore fan base were getting a bit sick of it right now. And I think Sticker Star was a big example of this, that kind of pushed people over the edge by having all the previous Paper Mario games be really bizarre and successes, and opening the Mario world. And then Sticker Star was so plain and boring that having a Mario and Luigi game that was also just stuck to the Mushroom Kingdom with all the typical moops and the Koopalings and stuff, and then having Paper Mario, who had a bad reputation at the time, thrown in, kind of made people just either want to boycott it or just not be interested in it, which is a shame, because in my opinion Paper Jam has the best combat the series has ever had, and so to see it not do very well is a really real, like, it's a shame. I kind of wish more people had played Paper Jam, but I get where they're coming from. If you're in for the story, if you're in for the world building, it wasn't really there. And then the remake, I think the remake would have done really well had the Switch not been about to come out and it being a 3DS game. And it being a 3DS game is what absolutely killed Bowser's Inside Story, the remake, because the original could be played on 3DS. It was a DS game, and the 3DS was backwards compatible. And at this point, it was a good 10 years old, I would say, maybe even a bit more. So it was pretty cheap to find secondhand, could be played on 3DS already, and it was a year, nearly 2 years into the Switch's lifespan. People just didn't care about 3DS games anymore. And in fact, apparently, according to the failure of Bowser's Inside Story, the remake, that's what convinced Nintendo to stop making 3DS games, because it performed so badly. And apparently, according to Yahoo Japan, after these statements from AlphaDream came out back in March 2018, so while development of Bowser's Inside Story, the remake, was going on, AlphaDream were like $3.7 million in debt, which is surprising, because I didn't think that. Obviously, game development costs money. I'm not saying it doesn't. But they weren't working on HD development kits, and I'm just wondering, like, they were working standard definition. I'm pretty sure they had to make a lot of new assets for the first remake. I mean, they had to make a lot of new assets for both of them, but they didn't have to do a massive amount of design because it was already there. It was a remake, after all. They only had to design the new stuff and then just make the graphics and update the engine for all of the content that was already there. So it seems like it's a surprise, but I guess 3 failures in a row, especially the last 2, which I barely paid back anything from their budget, it sounds like, is a big heavy hit for the company. Like, I'm interested to see what Paper Jam's budget was, to see if it made it back, because I can't imagine it didn't, but I could definitely see that the 2 remakes didn't. And to put them down under and then not have Nintendo step in and save them like they did with HAL back in the 90s is quite a surprise. It makes me think that maybe Nintendo wasn't seeing the value in AlphaDream anymore like they were when the series was at its prime. And I think that could come down to maybe some pictures behind the scenes weren't very good, because I have to question why AlphaDream suddenly started remaking all their old games. Like, it almost feels like a panic reaction, right? Like, they make a new game, Paper Jam, and it doesn't do very well, and so their first instinct is to remake the game that lots of people really liked and you can't get on the new system. And then that didn't do very well, so their sudden reaction was to remake the best-selling game in the series, because hopefully that will bring everyone back, instead of making something new. And maybe that was a big reason why Nintendo didn't want to step in and save them, because I've seen people being like, well, can Nintendo buy them? Will Nintendo buy the staff and just make new Mario and Luigi games internally? And that's not quite how Nintendo works with their games. See, it's not Nintendo who goes to AlphaDream and be like, make another Mario and Luigi game. It's AlphaDream who pitch to Nintendo, let's make another Mario. Can we make another Mario and Luigi game? Or here's an interesting gimmick for a new Mario and Luigi, and Nintendo approve it. That's how it works. So with no AlphaDream there to pitch Mario and Luigi games, we probably won't get another one unless another company comes in with a good idea to send to Nintendo, and one that will be proven to work. Because as far as Nintendo sees things, I don't know how much they chalk up to the bad sales of the last 3 games to the 3DS's sort of decline. But they may just see it that people aren't interested in the Mario and Luigi games as games anymore. They've only got a hardcore fan base, but nothing like mainstream anymore. No more mainstream appeal. And so don't care. They might turn down any pitches if they're not from AlphaDream, who obviously don't exist anymore. Now, they may hire AlphaDream employees, but they wouldn't make like a new team, unfortunately. They would kind of implement them into the existing teams that they've already got, and then have them working on projects that they actually want to do internally, or coming up with completely new ideas, because that's what Nintendo internally likes to do. That's how we got stuff like ARMS and Splatoon and Sushi Striker and now Ring Fit Adventure. They like to come up with new mechanics with the teams that they've got, new gameplay ideas. So I feel like most of the employees, it's a shame that, you know, they've all lost their jobs and stuff, but they're all talented, and I'm sure they'll be picked up by other companies. Maybe some will go back to Square, some might go to Nintendo, some might form a new studio. That happens quite a bit. So we'll just have to see and pay attention to some of the key members and find out what they do. But what about the Mario and Luigi? So what about the characters, I suppose, and the worlds from Mario and Luigi? So, because I know people are worried about, and people really like stuff like Fawful and wanted to see him in Smash or in Mario Kart Tour, and now they're worried that won't happen because of the company going down. And technically, Nintendo now own all the rights to the characters. Like, from what I understand from looking at previous games and how the rights work and what they have to do with characters, AlphaDream owned original characters like Fawful and Cackletta, and Nintendo obviously had like a foot in the door with them, and they were like, oh yeah, we also own them slightly because they're Mario characters. But upon, like, if they ever wanted to use Fawful for anything, they would have to go to AlphaDream and get permission from the original creators and get assets from them. But now Nintendo owns all of that, so if they wanted to use Fawful, they simply just could, and they wouldn't need to go that extra step, which might be more incentive for them to use those characters in other games, but equally they might just stick to not using them because Nintendo are a bit weird with Mario spin-offs. Like, if it's not Yoshi's Island and Donkey Kong Country, they basically get completely ignored. All the Mario RPGs have been ignored in previous spin-offs. Wario's been side series has been completely ignored. Like, it's weird. So Nintendo still need to change that attitude. But I think if they wanted to use a Mario and Luigi character, they could do. I don't see any reason why they couldn't. It might even be easier. And to keep up the positivity, because I want to sort of end this on a slightly high note, I suppose. A lot of people I've been seeing have been like, oh, all the Mario RPGs are dead, Paper Mario's dead, Mario and Luigi's dead, and like, Paper Mario's not dead. You can say what you like about Color Splash and Sticker Star. Like, I agree, Sticker Star wasn't very good, but I enjoyed Color Splash, and it is still technically an RPG, an action RPG. I know people want it to go back to like the style of the first two games, but remember, a big reason why they said they were moving away from that was because the Mario and Luigi games already existed, and so they didn't see the need to make more Mario RPGs. But with Mario and Luigi gone, that might be more incentive for them to take Paper Mario back to its roots, because recently Nintendo has been sort of responding to fan feedback and has been trying to make sure that those games are successful, like just all their games in general, by listening to what the fans want. Especially like in games like Smash Brothers, that's why we got stuff like K. Rool and Ridley finally. Paper Mario, the last two, clearly haven't sold very well, but I don't think the franchise is dead. In fact, I'm pretty confident that Intelligent Systems right at this moment are working on a new Paper Mario for Switch, and it wouldn't surprise me if they had decided to go back to their traditional RPG roots because of the last two not being so successful and fans outcrying for the first two. And so with Mario and Luigi gone now, there's more incentive to fill that gap, right? Fill the gap with Paper Mario, and that becomes the dedicated RPG series once again. Like, I know it's like, it sounds like I'm saying it's a good thing that AlphaDream went bad, and it's not. It's really not, because I really wanted to see new stuff from them. Especially, I'd have liked to see original stuff. I feel them going down means the chance of Tomato Adventure ever being localized or a remake ever happening is just gone now, which is an absolute shame, because I was really wanting that to happen at some point. But I just wanted to, I guess, say Mario and Luigi isn't completely dead. At least the world and characters can still be used, even if another game isn't made. And we still have stuff like Paper Mario is still alive and might be on the comeback, so it's not the absolute end of Mario RPGs. But yeah, that's all I've really got to say. I just kind of wanted to give my opinion on that after seeing many knee-jerk reactions to the news and stuff. And I wish AlphaDream's employees all the best in finding work. Hopefully they do get picked up by bigger companies or can somehow start something small again and work their way up and make games that they want to develop. Alright, thanks for listening to that. Thanks for listening to my ramblings, guys. My sort of random, no script. I just want to sort of talk about this. Special thanks to all the patrons who we're going to start appearing on screen for helping fund the website and keeping us up and running with all of our translations and stuff like that, all the articles we've got on there. If you want to help us and be a part of that, there's a link down below. Otherwise, just sharing this video with people, it would be a massive, massive help to us. So thank you guys, and always remember to return to the source.